Happy Monday, Liberty kitty cats, and to the full-grown Lions of Liberty out there. And you know what the Libertarian Party needs more of? It needs more Lions of Liberty. It needs more passionate libertarians who are willing to boldly roar about these ideas of liberty. So you know what? This is indeed a call to action to the Lions of Liberty out there. If you want to affect how the libertarian message is presented politically in 2020, there's only one way to do so, and that is to get involved with the Libertarian Party. You can join the Libertarian Party through our affiliate link at lp.org/Lions of Liberty. The awesome part about that is not only do you get to be involved with the Libertarian Party and affect how that message comes out next year, but you also get to support your favorite libertarian podcast at the same time. What a win-win. Somewhat ironic, perhaps, that I'm making this call out in an episode where my guest actually has pursued a different path than the Libertarian Party, but we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show, which of course is episode number 424 of this Lions of Liberty podcast, which means you can find today's show notes over at lionsofliberty.com/424. Enjoy the show, kids.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
My guest today is making his second appearance on this program. He is a former state senator in the state of Maine. He has in the past been endorsed by both Ron and Rand Paul when he ran for U.S. Senate. He is now currently a candidate for U.S. Congress, hoping to become another one of the very few libertarian voices who hold federal office. Very pleased to welcome back Eric Brakey. Eric, are you ready to roar?
I'm ready, Marc.
Excellent, excellent. And you better be ready because you're out there roaring every single day, trying to convince your fellow citizens of Maine that you would be a good person to send to U.S. Congress. And we'll get into more of that in just a minute. But you were on the show, it was about 150-something episodes ago. That number's probably off. But back when you were on that show, you know, the show is always growing. We did do a deep dive then into how you became a libertarian. But for those that might have missed that episode or might have come on since that time, why don't you just do the Cliff Notes version of what brought Eric Brakey to the ideas of liberty?
Well, it really was in 2010, the Tea Party wave. I'm ashamed to say when I was younger, in high school and all that.
Oh, come on. You're younger than me. Don't give me when I was younger.
Yeah, I'm 31 now. I guess some say that's still pretty young. But yeah, no, I believed in the wars and the Iraq and, you know, the invasions and all that. Believed in the whole line of we were spreading democracy, and it wasn't until 2010 in the Tea Party wave. My oldest brother got a copy of Ron Paul's Revolution in my hands, and I read it, and other things going on in the Tea Party movement. I just realized that we were being deceived. That it wasn't just the Democrat Party that was screwing us over; it was the establishment Republicans too. And that if we really believe in truly honestly believe in limited government, that there's no magical fairy dust that we sprinkle over the Department of Defense that makes it anything other than a government bureaucracy. If we're for limited constitutional government, it needs to apply across the board. So Ron Paul was why I'm here. I heard his message. I got involved just as a grassroots person trying to make a difference. Ended up joining the Ron Paul campaign in 2012 as a staffer, became the state director for the state of Maine. Maine was one of the few states where we won. We won the delegates to the National Convention. I was actually a delegate to the National Convention. But of course, if some folks remember their Ron Paul history, that was the year when the Mitt Romney folks kicked a bunch of Maine delegates out and replaced us with Mitt Romney supporters.
There were some convenient rule changes at the last minute, which is really crazy when I think about that, because Romney had the thing wrapped up. The only reason to do this stuff was, I guess, just to not be hassled by you guys at the convention.
Yeah, my understanding, there was a particular guy named Ben Ginsberg who was the Mitt Romney convention lawyer. He was sent up to Maine to the convention to be the fixer, like to make sure that Mitt Romney won that convention. And when we kicked his butt, I think he never quite got over it. And so I think part of this was Ben Ginsberg having an axe to grind. And I think it really hurt Mitt Romney's campaign in the end. Of course, when you look at the margin that Mitt Romney lost by, it's in the general election, it was less than the margin of people who voted for Ron Paul in the primary. So perhaps he shouldn't have kicked us while we were down.
Things to keep in mind. Now, Eric, you mentioned there that, you kind of realized that it was the establishment of both parties that were really the enemy. So, as you know, of course, libertarians have many different opinions on how to approach politics. Why did you decide that your best approach would be to sort of, join the establishment? Sort of, not that I'm calling you establishment, but join that party and sort of try to battle the establishment from within, as opposed to either, trying to run as a third party or an independent. Why did you choose the path of sort of battling within the Republican Party?
I think for the same reason that Ron Paul ran for Congress and ran for president as a Republican. It's because ultimately the rules are fixed. The rules are written by the two-party system, and it's very difficult to make a difference if you're trying to be a third party or an independent candidate. The rules aren't written to make that very easy and possible. So for me, I've had tremendous success. I ran for state senate in 2014. I ran in a Democrat-leaning district against an entrenched incumbent as a Republican, and I trounced him. I won by 18 points in a landslide. As a Republican in the state Senate, I kept to my liberty principles, and I passed constitutional carry, reformed welfare, passed right to try for healthcare freedoms of terminally ill patients who are there may be an experimental medication out there that could save their lives, but the FDA says that they haven't approved it yet. And we passed right to try so that people you don't need to listen to the FDA. You can make your own choices as you try to save your own life. I've got a lot of things done as a Republican. But of course, at the end of the day, I don't care about Republican or Democrat. I care about freedom and liberty. And it's just that the Republican Party has been the most effective vehicle to get where I want to go, which is to make liberty win. And if the Republican Party ever stopped being an effective vehicle, well, maybe I would consider looking for a different vehicle. Just the same as if my car stopped working, I would get a different car. But it's about making liberty win. And so far, for me, the Republican Party has been an effective vehicle to make that happen.
So to further the analogy, you might drive your car as long as it works, and even if it starts to have a few engine troubles, but if you have to actually get out and start pushing at that point, maybe it's time to get a new car.
Exactly.
Eric, you mentioned how you did run for Senate last time for the U.S. Senate, and you were not successful in that effort, at least not by the traditional political measures. But I believe we often learn a lot more from our quote unquote losses than we do from the easy wins in life. So I'm kind of curious, what did you learn from taking the political loss in that campaign? I'm sure you can come up with a lot of wins on your own.
Well, of course, when I won the state Senate race, I won that by knocking on every door in the district. Mm-hmm. I knocked on 8,000 doors.
And that's got to be hard because you are not in a small district. It might be small people-wise compared to a lot of districts, but geography-wise, that knocking on those doors, that's a lot of walking or a lot of driving.
it takes a lot of time. It was like a full-time job, knocking on doors and meeting voters. And of course, that was nice for a state Senate district, but you can't knock on every door in a U.S. Senate district, right. When you're running for the whole state. Yeah. Now it was a big that U.S. Senate race. I knew it was a David versus Goliath battle. I was going up against a guy who was a former 2-term governor who was an incumbent U.S. senator who was frankly ranked as one of the most popular U.S. senators in the country, but he's a big government guy. He's for big government at home and big government abroad, fighting wars that never end and spending more money on growing the surveillance state here at home, growing the welfare state. And I figure what a better antidote versus someone who believes in big government for everything than someone who believes in our Constitution and believes in limited government and getting government out of our lives, out of our pocketbooks, and out of Afghanistan. So that was that campaign. And even with it being an uphill climb, even with it being the biggest blue wave that hit Maine in a generation, our message still resonated very strongly. I performed better against him than any person who's ever challenged him in his many years of elected office. In fact, I got the same percentage of the vote that he got when he won the governorship the first go around. So I'm very happy with how it turned out. Of course, I would have preferred it if we had won and I'd been in the U.S. Senate now fighting for our freedoms and liberties there. But that U.S. Senate race, it really positioned me very well for this campaign for Congress that we've launched. We launched just about 3 weeks ago. We've been with tremendous grassroots support because of the U.S. Senate campaign. People know who I am. We've got strong support, strong grassroots support. Fundraising's been solid. And here's the best thing about this congressional district. This congressional district, Maine has 2 congressional districts. There's the first district, which is where the socialists live in southern Maine around Portland. And then there's the second district where I'm running, which is about 90% of the geography of the state. It's the biggest congressional district east of the Mississippi. That's where the bears and the moose live. And
and they don't get to vote, sadly.
They don't get to vote, but the people who live there are the kinds of people who have still very much a frontier attitude, want the government to leave us alone, get out of our lives. This is a district that Trump carried by 10 points. In fact, for 4 years, it was the only Republican congressional district in all of New England. And last year in the blue wave, a Democrat won and took out the Republican incumbent by a very slim margin, by a single percentage point. With Trump on the ballot, with the huge Republican turnout effort that we're going to see in Maine's second district this go around, this is a huge opportunity for the Liberty Movement. In fact, it's the best opportunity we've had to win a seat in Congress since we elected Thomas Massie in 2012. So it's been 7 years since we've gotten a new Liberty champion elected to Congress, since we got Thomas Massie there. This is our best opportunity. I'm going for it. I really appreciate having the support of Thomas Massie and Ron Paul and so many others. And I certainly welcome the support of any Lions of Liberty out there who'd like to see another champion of liberty roaring in the U.S. Congress.
Well, I'm curious how your campaign is going in terms of just within the Republican Party in Maine itself. Do you find that you're pretty welcomed by, fellow Republicans? That are they encouraging you to sort of be the candidate, or are you facing any opposition? Do you have any primary challengers waiting in the wings? What's the scenario there?
I have tremendous grassroots support within the party. Of course, when it comes to the establishment of the party, the establishment and I have never really gotten along. And the establishment is lining up behind some of my primary opponents there. But we're going into this a strong front runner because of my name recognition from the U.S. Senate race, from the fundraising we've already done. We're on a very strong path. We've already raised over $300,000 for this race, and we're moving forward strong. And we've got the message, we've got the fundraising, and most importantly, we've got the people, we've got the grassroots. That's how we won Maine for Ron Paul in 2012, with the grassroots. And that's how we're going to win this seat in Congress, with real people who may not be the party bigwigs, but are people who get out and vote, people who get out and volunteer, people who donate and chip in $5, $25, $50, whatever they're able to. That's how we make a difference. That's how we win.
Hold your horses, kitty cats. I have to jump in here for 1 second and tell you about another great libertarian podcast. And this one is not your typical podcast. This one doesn't really focus so much on the ideas of liberty, but on music. And who doesn't love music in some form or another? I guess some people don't, but who really wants to know those people anyway? Let's be honest. Anyway, the show is aptly titled Sounds Like Liberty. Sounds Like Liberty is hosted by Liberty's favorite nerdy husband, Nick Pacone, and his wife, Lizzie. They speak to guests every single week to find out who has the best music taste here in Ancapistan. And the Lions of Liberty have actually been on the show, at least a good number of us. Myself, Brian McWilliams, and Howie Snowden have all been on Sounds Like Liberty. We're still waiting for the John Odermatt episode, but we're not actually sure if John listens to music because we already know he doesn't watch movies. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and go on over to ancapmusic.com and check out Sounds Like Liberty, or just search Sounds Like Liberty on your favorite podcatcher. That's all I do. I stick completely to the podcatchers, but Sounds Like Liberty is an excellent show and really does a great job of merging culture, music, and liberty together. I highly recommend this program. If that wasn't enough, the show is co-hosted by an African-American female ANCAP. I mean, what more could you ask for? And by the way, Nick did tell me to say that in the ads. Do check out Sounds Like Liberty. Go to ancapmusic.com right now to learn more. As you mentioned, this is a largely sort of already Republican district. There's probably a good chance that if you do emerge as the the candidate for the party, that you will be the victor. But I'm kind of curious, along your way of campaigning and talking about these ideas, as someone who's coming at things from sort of a more philosophical libertarian perspective, are there any issues where you kind of, get some pushback from your constituency or anything like that? Are there certain subjects that you find are more difficult to talk to with even a traditional Republican base, as someone who comes at it from the ideas of individual rights?
I think that people largely respect that. Even if they disagree with me on something, they know where I stand. And I think the Republican base, people may disagree with me on certain things. Like, for example, I was very, vocal and supportive of the legalization of cannabis in the state of Maine, which it's now legal in the state of Maine. And I was the only Republican state senator to publicly support that. And some people may disagree with me on that, but they respect and they know that because I keep to my principles of liberty and limited government, and I've been the only one. I'm fiercely fighting for our gun rights, for welfare reform, for so many other issues that they care about. Sometimes people look at it, I don't agree with him on marijuana, but he's so good on so many other things, they're willing to look past it. But I will say beyond that, I'm excited that right now I feel like in the Republican Party, and I have to give a lot of credit to President Trump over this. We are finally in a place where we're ready to have a conversation about the wars. We're finally ready to look at what we put our soldiers through these last 20 years, what we've asked them to endure. And we're finally ready to have a conversation about bringing our troops home from Afghanistan, from Syria, from all of these conflicts where some declared, some never declared. We're finally ready to have a conversation about that. And that's something I'm planning to really lead the conversation on this campaign for Congress. And I'll tell you what, I hear from so many veterans, people who've come home from these wars, who are ready to have this conversation. It is so frustrating. All these people, every 2 years, people candidates get up there and say, I support our troops. I stand with our troops. Yeah, but they don't even listen to them. Our troops say it's time to come home, and we need people who are going to get up there and fight for that.
Do you find that foreign policy and bringing the subject of our imperial unconstitutional wars up to your constituency, is that a subject that you find people on the ground are already interested in? Are they already passionate about this? Or is it something where you kind of have to bring up the subject and say, look at all this money we're spending on these wars. Look at all the terrible results that happen. How do you find that conversation sort of playing out?
I think sadly for a lot of people, because of it's been going on for 2 decades now. It's just kind of like background noise. People have just gotten used to the idea that we're in wars forever. But for our soldiers, for our veterans, it's very personal. Our soldiers and veterans care about it very deeply. In Maine, we have one of the highest rate of veterans per capita in the country. 1 out of every 10 Maine people is veteran. And it's especially pronounced in the 2nd Congressional District. So, when I'm talking about these issues, I find that the biggest and most positive response I get from people is from veterans themselves.
Another issue that President Trump has certainly pushed the conversation on, regardless of where you come down on it, there's no doubt he has brought the issue to the forefront, and that's the subject of immigration. And I think this is a subject that even libertarians often differ on a little bit, at least in applying it to our modern day. How do you view that conversation when it comes to coordinating your libertarian beliefs along with sort of what a lot of your constituency might believe, when it comes to immigrants, when it comes to seeing immigrants as people that might be quote unquote taking their jobs or harming them economically? How do you approach that conversation? And how do you think that President Trump's approach to the immigration issue has moved the dialogue in whatever way it has?
I'll say, I think someone in the libertarian community who is, I think, really been great at having a discussion about the conflicting values in the immigration debate from a libertarian perspective has been Dave Smith on his, not to advertise a competing podcast.
Oh, that's all right. We're friends with Dave. It's okay.
But his podcast, part of the problem. I listen to him quite a bit, and I think that he brings up some of the difficult kind of nuanced things. When individuals are coming to our country, illegally or legally, it's potentially, it can be a violation of the non-aggression principle, right? If people are coming here and they're getting on the welfare rolls, if they're coming here and collecting more, taxpayer funded services, if they're coming here and voting in our elections and voting for more big government.
Do you think that's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just kind of curious, like, do you view it as a violation, a potential violation anyway, of the non-aggression principle because they're illegal immigrants, or would you view that any differently just if a native also votes to extract money via taxation, or someone who's born here does the exact same thing? Do you see any difference there?
I would say, it would certainly be a violation of the non-aggression principle for anyone to vote to steal money from other people.
All right, now you're reaching out to the anarchists.
So, well, of course, and so I'm not against voting. I'm not against participating in our government. Obviously, I do both of those things.
Right.
But I'm always advocating for doing less stealing, and having a government. If we're going to have government that steals less from us and doesn't try to boss us around and tell us what to do. So when we look at the immigration debate, I do believe that under the current system that we have, where we have a welfare state, there are a few ways we could tackle it, but assuming that the welfare state isn't going anywhere tomorrow, I do think that we need to have some kind of border security, and we do need to have some kind of a legal immigration process that is that doesn't just allow anyone and everyone to come here and sign up for free taxpayer money.
I don't want to get too bogged down on this one issue, but I'm just curious, like how you view sort of our current immigration system as opposed to what your ideal might be. I mean, do you think that it's okay as it is now and maybe just needs better security and or do you actually think we should have maybe just more legal immigration and sort of more of a crackdown on how illegal immigrants may or may not be able to access welfare benefits and that sort of thing?
I think that we need to look at security, but and on top of that, we got to have we have to. Once we've done the best we can to secure the border, we need to look at how we can reform the immigration system to allow for legal immigration in a way that makes sense and benefits both those who are coming here and the American people. I know President Trump has talked about moving more towards a merit-based immigration system. I think that there's potentially some worthwhile conversation to have there. If someone is coming here because they are pursuing the American dream, they want to work and contribute and earn their way, then I think that that's wonderful. That's something to be celebrated. And I think that if we can get an immigration system that's in alignment with that, I think that that's great. But the Statue of Liberty, what is the saying on there? Give us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning for free health care. Is that it?
I don't remember the last part, but
but sadly, I think that's what our immigration system has become. It has become people are trying to use our immigration system as a solution for the global poverty problem. And we can acknowledge that there are real global poverty problems, but our immigration system is not the answer to that. The answer to fixing global poverty is what has been going on for the last century or so. It's the advance of free trade, free commerce, a free enterprise, capitalism. I mean, we're seeing global poverty rates decline to the lowest rates we've ever seen in human history because of the power of free markets. That's what we need to be embracing, and not just this idea that we're going to allow people to come here and put them on the welfare rolls. Frankly, it doesn't actually work helping people in our own country get out of poverty, right. Putting them on the welfare rolls, and ends up just trapping people in these cycles of poverty and dependence.
And these last couple issues we've been discussing, foreign policy, immigration, these are the kinds of things that really are more of a sort of a federal issue, a federal part of the federal conversation, the national conversation than, say when you were just simply running for state senate back in the day. So I'm curious, what other sort of like challenges do you come upon trying to craft your message more for this sort of national office as opposed to the state office where you're, only working within your community and, going to the state office, whereas now you're going to represent your state, basically, or at least your district, in front of the whole country.
Yeah, well, certainly there are separation of powers, right, in our Constitution. There are things that the federal government is authorized to do, and there are things that they're not authorized to do, whereas the states kind of have their own authority under the 10th Amendment and under their own individual constitutions. So I know that seems to get lost with a lot of politicians these days who just want Washington, D.C. to fix every problem with whatever government solution they come up with. But I will say one thing that I saw and I experienced on the state level that is a big part of my impetus to run for federal office was everything we do on the state level is tied to federal funds, federal mandates, Washington, D.C., unconstitutionally actually, telling us what to do, how to live, and what our own laws can be. We've completely lost the 10th Amendment. So on the federal level, I want to decentralize power again. I want to advocate for letting states be, their own cultures, setting their own laws. I mean, Maine is different than California.
I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, it's safe to say. And I don't want in Maine to tell California how your state has to be. And I don't want California telling us how we have to be.
To be honest, I kind of wish some part of me wishes Maine could tell us how to be a little bit, but that's a different subject.
Maybe you guys, frankly, sometimes I wonder. I see all these efforts to break California into 6 different states or everything. I wonder maybe that's the way you guys should go. I hear from some of the folks in Northern California who just get sick and tired of it all. But I will say, I was the Senate chairman for the Health and Human Services Committee in Maine for 4 years, and one of the biggest federal programs that I saw that was so broken, trapping so many people in poverty, and that's the Medicaid program. And because the Medicaid program, it's got this huge welfare cliff. You either get 100% or you get 0. And so people who are in this situation where they just need a little bit of help to get by, they go to the welfare office and say, can I get a little bit of help? And they say, sorry, you don't qualify. But if you quit your job, we can sign you up tomorrow.
Oh, geez.
And that's pushing people into the system. So when we're looking at these broken welfare programs, and we're looking at our broken healthcare system, we have to look at Washington, D.C. as a big source of many of the problems here. I've been working with direct primary care physicians in my state to come up with a market-based healthcare reform plan, which let's take that $500 billion we put into Medicaid, and right now we put in the hands of government bureaucrats. It goes to hospital bureaucrats. It goes to enrich the middlemen. Let's take that money. Let's put that into HSAs for the beneficiaries that they control, so they can have direct relationships with their doctors again. And let's let people in the private healthcare market, let's let them save tax-free in health savings accounts so we can cut out these middlemen, because the middlemen are the only ones getting rich. Patients are overpaying, doctors are overworked, the insurance companies, the hospital bureaucrats, the government bureaucrats, they got their hands out. They're forcing us to pay their tolls. They're getting rich while we're getting screwed over. So we need to tackle this. We need to take this bull on by the horns. Republicans really dropped the ball on it the last several cycles. And I think that, this is one issue we really have to tackle on the federal level, and that's getting back our healthcare freedom.
All right, well, that's a good transition, because I want to talk a little bit about, you've already had a lot of success at the state level with getting actual reform done, actual changes done. I think you were a big part of getting constitutional carry instituted in Maine, as well as you mentioned the right to try bill. So what kind of bills like that, if you were elected to Congress, which we should emphasize again is very, very realistic, so long as you come out of this Republican primary unscathed, or at least victorious. I guess you could be a little scathed. But what kind of bills would you be able to bring to the federal level? I mean, I think getting something done on the state level in Maine is obviously a lot different animal than getting, the entire party on your side or enough of the Congress on your side, for some kind of liberty bill in Congress. So what would your approach to that be were you to be elected to Congress?
Well, there's a number of things I want to tackle. First of all, of course, I want to do whatever I can to help pass audit the Fed and hopefully eventually end the Fed. But we got to get some more folks there to join with Thomas Massie and Rand Paul and others to get that done. There's a particular bill that Senator Rand Paul has proposed in the Senate. Currently, it doesn't even have a sponsor in the House, but it's a significant bill. Something that I don't think gets enough attention. It's something called the REINS Act. Because right now, one of the problems that we have in Washington is we have these unelected bureaucracies. We never voted for them. We never elected them, and yet they seem to have more power over our day-to-day lives than even our elected officials do. And so, for example, in Maine, our lobster industry is under attack. This unelected federal government agency has said that we have to cut our lobster lines in half, which would decimate this Maine industry. We have no say in it. We didn't vote for these people. They're just telling us how it is. The REINS Act would require that for every regulation proposed by these unelected agencies, if it negatively affects the American economy by more than several $1 million, that Congress needs to vote on it. It needs to be Congress has to approve it before it can go into effect. This was the whole idea that we were supposed to have government of the people, by the people, for the people, and yet we have regulation without representation effectively. So we got to rein in these out of control government agencies, and we got to restore our voice in this process. That's one thing I want to tackle. I've already talked about healthcare reform, which is a big priority we need to tackle. And we've talked about the wars a bit. I'll tell you, this is, for me, the foreign policy has always been the biggest issue, because it was the issue, frankly, that I felt the most betrayed when I realized how much we'd been lied to during the lead up into the war in Iraq and everything that's gone ever since.
I think that was a wake up moment for many people coming into these ideas.
Yeah. And it was, I tell you, that was the thing. That was the hardest thing for me to let go of when I was transforming from a neocon into a more liberty-minded person. Right. Because it was so much a part of the Republican identity for so many years. And it was such a lie. And we've destabilized the region. Millions of people have died. Our soldiers have been thrown into these impossible situations. I'll tell you a story from a good friend of mine who was a veteran in Iraq. He tells me this story. When he was there on the ground, they were going door to door. And collecting weapons and looking for terrorists or what have you. And he knocks on this door and no one answers. And he knocks again and no one answers. And so he shoots the door open. What he didn't know is there was a little girl who was coming to the door, ready to come in to answer the door.
Oh my God.
And so she's dead.
Wow.
Now he couldn't have known that. It's not his fault. He was put in that situation.
He's just following his protocol.
Right. And he has to live with that. And not to mention the family that lost their little girl. They have to live with that. And this is the situation that the politicians in Washington, D.C. are putting our soldiers in every single day for the last 2 decades. And they don't even have the courage to vote on these wars or to provide for us a reason why they continue. 18 years in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. Our youngest soldiers there are younger than the war itself. It's time to bring them home. And that's something that from the bully pulpit of this seat in Congress, I can be a loud voice for our soldiers and our veterans who say it's time to come home. And that's going to be one of my number one priorities.
So would you take a little bit of a Ron Paul approach in that you might propose bills or get up there to talk about an issue that you might know you're not going to get votes on, you're probably not going to end the war tomorrow, but would you put yourself in whatever positions you could to try to be a voice for liberty on these ideas and just get the conversation at least moving somewhat in a more liberty direction?
Absolutely. The value of a congressional seat is not just, oh, we've got someone who can vote the right way, or not just someone who can put bills in. I mean, those are valuable things, of course. But the real value is the bully pulpit. Let's look at like what Ron Paul did with his seat, or on the other side, we can look at what like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing with her seat in Congress. She's using the bully pulpit to spread socialism, sadly, and sadly, there are too many folks in my generation, millennial, who are receptive to that. But we've also seen that many young people in our generation are receptive to the freedom message, the message that Ron Paul and Rand Paul have carried for so many years. And if we're not going to lose this next generation will one day be running this country. If we're not going to lose them to socialism, we need leaders in Congress willing to use the bully pulpit to advocate an alternative message, the message of freedom. That's what I intend to do with this seat in Congress, not just to be a reliable vote for freedom and liberty, not just to propose good bills when I'm able to, but to really stand up every day and use the bully pulpit to spread the message, to bring new people into our movement, just as Ron Paul has done, just as Rand Paul has done, Thomas Massey has done. I intend to do that every day that I'm there.
Another one of the very few sort of libertarian leaning or whatever you want to define it as liberty type congressman is this guy, you may have heard of him, named Justin Amash. And he recently decided to leave the party and become an independent. And then I'm not going to ask you to comment on his decision on that. You can if you want to, but I'm more just curious and you kind of did allude to this earlier in the show, if you were to be elected as a Republican, but you came to find the conditions in the Republican Party intolerable, could you foresee an event? I don't want to get you in trouble with your party here, but could you foresee a possible situation where you too might decide, the Republican Party is no longer a home of liberty where I can advance these ideas and consider either maybe joining the Libertarian Party or becoming an independent or maybe something I can't even think of right now. But is that a situation you could ever see playing out depending on the circumstances?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's impossible, but I would say it's unlikely. I mean, I mean, Ron Paul was still able to, even in the Bush years, was able to use his position in the Republican Party to advocate for the ideas. And I think that he was more effective, even in the Bush years, in that position as a Republican than he was when he tried to run as a Libertarian Party candidate for president. So as for Justin Amash, I will say I have tremendous respect for Justin Amash. I know him personally. I respect him personally. His decision kind of befuddles me a little bit, to be honest, because it seems like his decision on the whole Mueller investigation requires believing the deep state. And I think as liberty-minded people, we're supposed to be really skeptical of these agencies, right, like the CIA and the FBI. So again, I say this with much respect for Justin Amash. I disagree with him on that particular issue, and I think it befuddles me a little bit. And I think the sad result is that I think it's going to be difficult for him to keep his seat in Congress. I think that there's going to be a Republican running, a Democrat running, and I hope that he manages to keep his seat. But I worry that as an independent, he's going to lose that seat, and I think that will be a great loss for the liberty movement if he's not there in Congress. There with me and Thomas Massey, advocating for the cause of liberty.
Well, I suppose hindsight in a year or two from now will tell us whether that was a smart decision or not. One more thing, Eric. I know that in your last Senate run, you were formally endorsed by both Ron Paul and Rand Paul. Have you received their official endorsement for this congressional run, or have you had contact with them about it yet? What's the scenario there? Because obviously those are voices you'd love to attach to yourself.
Yeah, well, I've been endorsed by Ron Paul in every race I've run, Rand Paul as well, and I have not formally gotten their endorsements yet for this campaign, though I know that Rand has been offering help and support. Thomas Massey has been offering help and support, and so while I don't have these for this campaign yet formally, they've been very, very supportive and very helpful. So I know that they're on our team.
All right, Eric. Well, I want to give you the chance right now to make a final pitch because, as I mentioned before, there are many libertarians who have very different views about politics. Some people don't believe you should be involved in the two main parties at all. You should only participate with the Libertarian Party. Other libertarians might think that participation in politics at all is just a bad idea. So I want you now to make a pitch not to only the normal voting libertarians that are already out there that might participate in a regular election, but perhaps even the people that don't normally vote, or the people that are currently maybe big L libertarians that they really want to stick to the Libertarian Party. Why should all of those people give a chance to the Eric Brakey campaign and consider tossing you support regardless of where they live? Because this is, for a federal office.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate it because, of course, we as a liberty movement are powerful when we concentrate our resources and we work together. That's how we made the Ron Paul movement happen in 2012. And of course, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ron Paul. When Ron Paul retired from Congress and he passed the torch of liberty on to all of us and said, go and run with it. That's what I've been doing since day one, from running it for state Senate, passing constitutional carry, welfare reform, right to try, advocating for liberty every day, running for U.S. Senate, now running for Congress. This is a big opportunity. This is the best opportunity that liberty-minded people have had to get a champion of liberty in Congress since we got Thomas Massey elected in 2012. If you think that it is valuable to have people in Congress using the bully pulpit to spread the message and spread the ideas of liberty and building our movement so that one day that Ron Paul revolution that we built will come to fruition again, then you can invest in our campaign $5, $10, $25, $50, $100, whatever you're able to afford. You can do that at ericbrakey.com/donate. And I appreciate it very much. This is a big opportunity. And Marc, I really appreciate you having me on the Lions of Liberty today.
Sure thing, Eric. And I know that I don't need to tell you to keep up the great work and keep on roaring because you got a campaign. So you're going to be roaring a lot. Thanks a lot, Eric. Best of luck.
Thank you, Marc. Take care.
All right, my Liberty kitties. It was a great time roaring once again with Eric Brakey. Certainly a campaign to watch because there are just not that many libertarian voices that have the national stage. But of course, the Libertarian Party will also be seeking to find a voice to hopefully get some of that national stage in 2020. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you can join through our link, our affiliate link at lp.org/Lions of Liberty. We get a little kickback for any signups through there. And myself and Brian are actually participating in an event for the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles out here here. We're putting our time where our mouth is because I do think it's important to be involved, especially when it comes to your local level and just meeting other libertarians out there. So we've been a little bit involved with the Libertarian Party out here in Los Angeles County. Angela McCardle does a great job putting together events and just doing so much organizing and fundraising out here in Los Angeles, which, as you can imagine, is an uphill battle in many, many ways. But we will be doing this on November 15th, 2019. This will be in Huntington Beach, a little bit of a hike for me and Brian. And I say that somewhat snarkily. It's not actually far, but with LA traffic on a Friday, it's going to feel a little far. But we are dedicated to the cause. So we will be down there giving a little talk, probably on the subject of how to talk to your progressive friends about liberty, because the fact is everybody out here in California has progressive friends. That is a fact. So if you want to talk to them about liberty and learn how, get some pointers, come on out to this event. This is the Rockin' Liberty fundraiser, and not only does it feature myself and Brian recording, we'll probably be recording that little talk for a future podcast, but it will also feature a whole bunch of punk bands. To be honest with you, I have not seen any of them before, so I can't really tell you honestly that they're great, but I feel like they're great because they're supporting a libertarian cause. And we want to support libertarian bands out there that are willing to support us and are willing to support our ideas. So those bands are called 390, Carpet, Wrecked, and the Whining Pussies. But in addition, there's going to be somebody else there that you have all heard of by this point. He is Adam Kokesh, libertarian rabble-rouser, author of the book Freedom. He's been on my show as well as on Felony Friday, and he is also running for the Libertarian Party's presidential nomination. He will be the keynote speaker at this event. So again, this is November 15th. I have shared this event in the Lions of Liberty Forum. Of course, you can find that on Facebook as our public forum. Just type Lions of Liberty Forum, and we'll get you right in there real quick. But this event is going to be at Surf Dogs Sports Grill in Huntington Beach, November 15th, 2019 at 7:30, and we are going on very close to the beginning, so get there early. Get there early and get sauced up, because I promise you we sound a lot better and we're a lot more entertaining when you've put a few back first. And I think the best way to find it is to probably find their Facebook page. That's the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. And if you still need help finding it, just drop me an email, Marc, M-A-R-C @lionsofliberty.com, and we'll get you all set up there. Of course, this podcast is not just me on Mondays. It is the world's greatest, and some would say the world's first, libertarian variety show. It features myself every single Monday on the flagship Lions of Liberty podcast, where I have been hosting interviews, roundtables, debates, and all sorts of shenanigans and hijinks for over 6 years now. And then on Wednesdays, we have Brian McWilliams with his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty on Electric Liberty Land, while John Odie Odermatt wraps things up every Friday with his hard-hitting and extremely inspiring look at the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday. By the way, congratulations to John, who just hit 200 episodes A Felony Friday, man. I couldn't even imagine myself getting to that level at one point. And now to see Brian and John both spring off into their own projects and to be hitting these milestones, the milestones that I never knew I would hit myself years ago, is just really amazing to see. So congrats to John for doing a great job, never missing a single week, despite many behind the scenes technical difficulties that I won't reveal right here. But let's just say any podcaster knows a lot of stuff goes wrong, but we managed to show up every single week, 3 times a week, absolutely for free. That's why it's very important that you hit that subscribe button no matter how you listen. I listen on Overcast, but Apple Podcast, Stitcher, these are all popular ways. You can find us on YouTube as well. And if getting this show for free just doesn't work for you, you can also pay for it. You can pay for it by joining our Lions of Liberty Pride on Patreon. And we don't just ask for your money, we give you a ton, I tell you, of bonus content, including live streams of a whole bunch of our shows, including last week's Halloween Spectacular on Electric Liberty Land. That was, of course, a absolutely ridiculous and uproarious time, as it always is. I don't know why we keep having weird dreams every Halloween, and why Bill Weld always seems to make appearances, but nonetheless, be sure to go click back, check out last week's Electric Liberty Land if you missed that, because it is just a ridiculous fun time like we do like to have here. But that show was live streamed completely unedited to our Patreon supporters, and you can now join and see those live streams for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't get you access to everything. It doesn't get you access to all the bonus content we do, but you do get access to the live streams at that level. So I think that alone is well worth dipping your old toe in the Lions of Liberty water, the water of our little Liberty kiddie pool in our Lions Den. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, so it's probably time to wrap up the show. Don't forget, of course, to tune in to Brian this Wednesday on Electric Liberty Land, and to John on Friday with Felony Friday. And until next week, kids, live long and live free.